the Kapor Center for the financial support they have given us to make this summit possible. And now it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Sunne Wright McPeak. Sunne is the president and CEO of the California Emerging Technology Fund, which is working to bridge the digital divide, as you know. Now, you have a pretty extensive biography in your program, but I really do want to call out a few highlights. Sunne has an absolutely amazing career. She spent over 14 years on the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors, and I can speak to that because I walked precincts for Sunne in the first election. She also served as president and CEO of the Bay Area Council, and also served as secretary for Business, Transportation, and Housing, the state's largest agency. Sunne exemplifies leadership in all its greatest forms. She knows how to get things done, and she gets things done, as you can see with California Emerging Technology Fund. So please join me in welcoming Sunne Wright McPeak.
Oh, thank you, Linda, so much for that very, very lovely, generous introduction. I think I'm confined to this podium, am I, or is this detachable? No, it's detachable, Dan? Okay. I then will probably detach it. Okay. Because I hate standing behind a podium to engage in such a lovely coming together. I call it sort of a congregation. If there were wine, I would say it's communion. I don't think we're serving that yet this morning. But let me just say that this is the 5th annual summit of the East Bay Broadband Consortium and my 4th. So at some point I got disinvited. I've now been invited back. And I really appreciate being here, and I always learn. So I'm going to be here the whole time to do that. I'm going to sort of try to, kick this off and talk about the solutions for digital inclusion. And note the terminology that's evolving is to the notion of inclusion as the solution to a divide that we've all recognized. And I will comment on 3 basic themes for you to reflect on as you're hearing the other speakers talk about best practices. Those are leadership, they are demand aggregation, smart city planning in the physical sense for deployment, and then integration of digital inclusion into every other strategy or solution for a major challenge we face. So just keep in mind, it's the whole notion of leadership. It is smart city or comprehensive planning, demand aggregation that goes with that, and third, integration into every other facet of our community life, our social engagement. So let me start with leadership. Linda and I go way back. She is an extraordinary leader. I hope you had the opportunity to hear her remarks when she was interviewed when we concluded a decade of work at the California Emerging Technology Fund. And it was just incredible to have a lifetime of partnership in Contra Costa County with Linda. What we have in the East Bay Broadband Consortium is the base of civic engagement that came together. The leadership organizations, Darian Louie has headed up at least 2 incarnations of an organization that had the thrust to focus on economic prosperity. And always when you're talking about economic prosperity, we come right back to how are the people doing, and how do we ensure that we've got a trained workforce, quality of life, and you can't talk about that without getting into digital inclusion these days. Linda had been at the Contra Costa Council, the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, and then in the East Bay to add Solano County, and Sandy, person will be here. So she has the 3 counties together. We've got civic leaders in the room, and you can't get anything done without that. In fact, I look around this room, and Linda, of course, acknowledged James Nixon, James and Joe Gross, who was a founding member of the California Emerging Technology Fund Board of Directors. He was part of the 12 who hired me, have worked together on actually economic investment in disadvantaged communities from an economic strategy. And James, thank you for pulling together this whole gathering and doing, again, the summit. Because the leadership that's required on all of these challenges means that we individually take responsibility to make something happen. So that's my definition of leadership. There are many others. I'm going to try to not be behind. You can still hear me, right? Okay, it feels much better to have a conversation if I'm not standing behind that podium. So think about that for a moment, because at the end of the day, what I know the East Bay Broadband Consortium would hope is that each of you, although you are obviously extraordinary leaders on your own, or you wouldn't have found yourself in this room at 8:30 or 9 a.m. When you have an already busy schedule, what we hope you will each do is think about what additional thing you can take responsibility for to make happen. And it's easy. You'll have a conversation at your workplace. You will interact with a colleague. You'll be on BART. You will see an opportunity to say, why don't we use technology? I hope you will also be a little bit impatient and adamant and demanding of everybody who's running for office in this season, because it's time everybody get off their duff and stop talking about it and actually do something. This is sort of an urgent situation as I would view it, and that's the same perspective I had 45 years ago working in healthcare at the corner of 3rd and Railroad in Pittsburgh, California, when Linda and I first met, and that was that we have too many silos, we have increasing amount of poverty, and we don't get our act together in time to make a difference in the lives of people that we interact with today. So the state of the challenge for digital inclusion, or if you will, the state of the digital divide, is less today than it was 10 years ago. It was pretty damn big 10 years ago. Today, though, in the state that likes to pride itself in being the fount of innovation, we still have 31% of Californians either unconnected or underconnected. Let me repeat that. 31% of Californians are either unconnected, i.e. have no high-speed internet access at home. They might be able to do dial-up. You all remember that tone. If you can figure it out and have a modem. Or they're underconnected. So when I say the 31%, that's 13% are unconnected totally, and another 18% are what we call underconnected. They have a smartphone only. Now, those devices are marvelous. All of you can actually be multitasking. I hope you're doing that. If you're not, please tweet out something brilliant that I say, so that my bosses know that I'm doing something. You can literally be on vacation and still be connected to the office. You can navigate the internet. What you cannot do easily if you are a student is do your homework and do composition. You can't get keyboarding skills to take the tests that you're going to be judged on. If you are an adult, it's really tough to get workforce skills using a smartphone only, because that's not actually what all employers need you to be able to do. And if you can figure out how to do your resume and submit it successfully online with just the smartphone, they should hire you immediately. So please put that on your resume, that I don't have anything but a smartphone and I figured out how to get around your system. So that is why we are concerned about the underconnected. But 31% of Californians who are not fully engaged in the digital revolution, in the digital economy, or just basic democracy. You ever tried to get something from your local county or city or state lately? You must do it online. So we are actually leaving behind at an accelerating pace those who are not digitally included. That's why this summit becomes so urgent. Leadership, leadership. Thank you, Sandy. You were introduced. I know that it's really tough trying to get down 680 or 580 or 880. Okay, thank you. Sandy from Solano is here. So let me now talk about the other kinds of sort of best practices, because James wants you to think about this. Let me also say that the people who are not online are the most disadvantaged. So I told you, generally 31%, but let me just give you these statistics. And by the way, these are from 2017. We will be doing another statewide survey that'll be done in January. Got to get past an election season so people are not just traumatized by surveys, and then be able to feed this into the new legislature and the new administration. We'll release it in February. But through focus groups we've done since then and other follow-up surveys, these numbers still hold. So if you are Spanish speaking, 25% of you are not online. If you are a person with disabilities, 25% of you are not online. If you are over 65, a good many of us don't like to admit it, but 31% of us are not online. If you don't have a high school diploma, then an even higher percentage, 33%, are not online. So the most disadvantaged are the ones who are not online. It's an interesting dynamic that the demographic that is between 70 and 85 are getting online pretty rapidly, because it is the way we all stay in our home longer if you've got a serious medical problem and can be monitored remotely instead of being in a facility. So in terms of what do we do here in this room and in this region, let me talk about the smart city planning, physical environment for just a moment. Mike Dozier, thank you for being here. He headed up the San Joaquin Valley, the partnership for the San Joaquin Valley for a number of years, which became the umbrella for the San Joaquin Valley Consortium. Mike actually knows California very well, has been a leader in economic development. He joined Beacon. Congratulations that you recruited him. So that's terrific that you're here, Mike. So while the largest problems in terms of connectivity is in the rural area, when it was like 3 or 4 summits ago, and Steve Blum had done the analysis on the connectivity speeds, right? The grade was a C, an average of a C across the region. Anybody in this room who's satisfied with a C, just go home, or take some donuts on your way out, or whatever we have as lovely refreshments. But you need not be here. Here is the deal on deployment. It actually has to make economic sense or be subsidized. So in a good sense, we've all come together. We have a little bit of money, a little bit more that we got into the California Advanced Services Fund. In urban areas, however, where the real pressure point is in planning and aggregating demand. So in the East Bay with 3 counties, and there has to be something over 35 cities, those jurisdictions should be looking at how do we actually plan for deployment, where do we want to be in the rights of way, go to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and say the next time that you are doing planning for investing the billions of dollars in what should be mobility as the outcome, please consider how you're going to accommodate and facilitate broadband. When I was secretary at BT&H, Business Transportation Housing, and had Caltrans and interacted with the Transportation Commission, I would tell everybody the best trip is a virtual trip. If I can unload a trip from the system, that relieves congestion and it reduces impact on the environment. So please look at how you can actually aggregate demand. And then if the planners and the public works directors start talking to at least 5 other folks and departments that have contracts for IT with some of our best friends in the broadband world, you could aggregate demand and say, we shall not do business with you unless you're upgraded. I mean, just plain old, can we actually get our act together and aggregate demand? You'll hear from Tony in San Leandro, who's done that very well. You're going to hear about the pilot project, other smart cities. Listen to that. Now, here's where in the urban area we also, I think, need to concentrate, and that is, how do we get more people online? And I rack my brain about how almost daily, how are we going to get to the 13% who are offline, that's 5 million people. The 18% who have a smartphone only, that's 7 million more people. So 13 million people, how are we actually going to reach them? And they tend to be lower income, disadvantaged in many ways, but low income. Well, we need to go where a lot of low-income people interact with the existing bureaucracy. So that third best practice is integrating digital inclusion into every strategy that you have. You will hear today about workforce training. You'll hear from Tech Exchange that started out to be OTX West. Bruce, thank you for founding it. Thank you, Seth, for taking the helm, being our partner in school to home that we want to do more of, Dan, in the East Bay. There is this model that is actually Bruce started of a very comprehensive ecosystem of refurbishing, doing workforce training in the process, and then getting devices out to people. And in the meantime, being in schools, being where there are a lot of people who need devices and training them to get online. But think about it, in our schools and people in public schools in California, we have 3 million kids who go to schools in low-income neighborhoods, and most of them do not have devices at home, are not online at home. The schools don't buy enough devices, they're still buying textbooks, and are not fully engaging parents to be online, even though our local control funding formula imperative says engage parents. If parents don't speak the same language as is dominant in the school or with the teachers, if they're intimidated by that school site, if they don't know how to navigate the portal to check on student homework or grades, those parents are not going to be able to hold accountable the school. I want to hasten to say I work in some of the most difficult neighborhoods throughout California, in the poorest neighborhoods, and I am just incredibly impressed with the dedication of educators in public schools today. So it is not for a lack of really good teachers or good principals in these schools. It is that we haven't figured out how to collectively provide the right structure to support the learning that needs to take place of all of our teachers, get professional learning, for them to be able to incorporate the technology into their lessons, and for the parents to have devices that their kids take home and know how to use, not only to support their kids' learning, but how to also be engaged in the accountability of how the kids get their homework in and what their grades are. Unbelievable what kind of change in attitude happens when kids know their parent actually can check that stuff. And it is such a transforming dynamic with those schools when parents are engaged and online, and language is no longer a barrier. So in the 3 counties, there are 45 or so school districts. Do not stop until every one of them is actually doing the kind of program I just described. We happen to call it school to home, but it being called anything you want. It has to be comprehensive, not just dropping technology into the laps of students and not training the principals, not training the teachers, not engaging the parents. That is not going to help. But if you do a comprehensive program, then we permanently close the digital divide for all of those families who have kids in public school. So please take that on. A couple of years ago when I was here, I think it was actually the 4th summit, I was stopped going out by Ann Spalding, who has been active in the East Bay Broadband Consortium and a volunteer with Tech Exchange. And she said, do you have anything for me to do? And nobody should offer to volunteer for me. I called her the next morning. And here's what Ann did, but I'm going to give you the punchline. I said, I really need to get every agency in Contra Costa County and then start working in Alameda County. Haven't gotten to Solano, but this is what needs to be done. We want the Social Services Department to inform every one of their clients about the affordable broadband offers that exist in the region. Everybody who is on Medi-Cal or Covered California should know. Everyone who's going through workforce training should know. Every school district should distribute that information. We entered into agreements with 39 institutions, agency, public departments, a couple of big nonprofits like La Clinica. Jane Garcia was wonderful in doing that, and said, so distribute this information and tell the families that these offers exist. They're $10, $15 a month. They're going to start expiring. We worked really hard to get those requirements imposed on those companies when they were going through corporate mergers. And guess what? All of those agencies understood it was important for their clients to be online. All of them realized if they could communicate with their clients online, that would save them money, paper, would save time. People didn't have to come into the office and usually generate more greenhouse gas emissions into the environment. And none of them could get out of their own shadow to actually do it proactively. They all distributed the information. We have some tracking that we can sort of gauge how many people actually signed on, but it's not a full, deep, and abiding commitment to digital inclusion. So a next summit should have all of the public agency departments here saying, what are you doing to get your most disadvantaged clients online? And that is something you should be asking everyone that you interact with. Okay, so let me just tell you that there's workforce training, there is social services, it's healthcare, it is education that we need to incorporate digital inclusion into. If you're doing economic development, please do mixed use, mixed income, and make them smart communities so that everyone to begin with is online. If you are thinking about how we're going to have a trained workforce, I see a lot of business people here. Elliot, you're here again. Thank you very much. It is just impossible to get a trained workforce, even in this region that has the highest digital adoption going. The skills most lacking across the state in every region, yes, there's so-called soft skills for being workforce prepared, but then it is digital skills, called ICT, information and communication technology skills. It's missing. So every workforce development program needs to incorporate digital inclusion. Okay, in conclusion, you will hear today from Olivia Cueva, who is with the David Glover Center. Let me just, where's Olivia? I've not met. Okay, Olivia. You might even be guessing what I'm going to be saying. So let's go back to leadership. Nothing happens without visionaries who then follow through, make something happen, take personal responsibility. And David with Occur was one of our early partners, grantee partners, as was Tech Exchange or OTX West. And here's what David said that was so brilliant at our first grantee learning community. The economic divide, or excuse me, the digital divide is just another manifestation of the economic divide. Technology is just a tool. It's not even my first love. You know, I started out in healthcare, and then I had to figure out how to do other things like let's grow the economy so we can pay for healthcare. And then, you know, you learn along the way, you got to do education and got to train people. It's actually a pretty interesting ecosystem that has to come together, not siloed, but actually focus on the people we're trying to help. And so if the digital divide is just another manifestation of the economic divide, then we need to have digital inclusion in every facet of our strategies. That is why you've joined us, we continue to have our Internet for All Now campaign. Some of you will recognize this, if you haven't seen them before, as a really good church fan. Church fan, everybody knows church fans. I'll come back to my spiritual dimension and about leadership. Okay, these are so good. They are union made and they're very lightweight and they're hard to destroy. And they send a message. If you're in any room delivering testimony, and anyone has ever been in a church that has good gospel music, they will get the message, and it's a way to reinforce what you are saying. We say Internet for All Now. You helped us pass legislation last year. It was barely acceptable to us. It's sort of our bill got hijacked. We've got to do a lot more work in the legislature and implementing at the PUC. I want to say, if anyone is here from the California Public Utilities Commission, the PUC is really trying to do a good job of dealing with a lousy piece of legislation. And what we did get is a digital adoption, an adoption account. So that's going to continue to grow. It was a small amount to begin with, but there's hope on the horizon. Hope on the horizon that there will be funding to sustain your work. And there's $10 million more for regional consortia. So that's what is the good news. You actually have to continue the work. You don't get to declare victory when this grant is over from the PUC. You have to have a really aggressive agenda and continue to provide that focus, that beacon for everyone in this room and around you. It is imperative to have Internet for All now. I'm introducing